So lemurs, out of everywhere in the entire world, lemurs only occur in Madagascar, a small island off the coast of Africa. And this is pretty devastating for them because due to habitat loss and a number of different factors, over 90% of the 110 or so species of lemurs that are recognized are critically endangered. But lemurs are an incredibly diverse group of primates. They actually have adapted to have different feeding strategies, different parenting styles, even different calls. So the Indri is one of the largest species of lemurs and has these really amazing long falling calls, exotic calls that it uses to call to each other from treetop to treetop through the rainforest. So at some point, my mom was doing some physical therapy and needed to sing a lot of different notes in order to exercise her vocal cords. So I suggested that she pull up a video of the Indri to sing along. Given the imperiled status of so many lemur species, one way that we can hopefully ensure and prolong their survival is to study aspects of their adaptation and their survivability, such as the gut microbiome. In the wild, these gut microbes would actually be kind of superhero sidekicks that help to digest the specific diets that each lemur species consumes. As a doctoral student, when I was at Duke University, I was lucky enough to get to do a lot of research out at the Duke Lemur Center, comparing the gut microbiomes from different lemur species that have different shapes of guts and different microbiomes that they use to digest different diets. Working with lemurs is super glamorous. I mean, I think to date I've collected over 250 fecal samples, so a lot of it is just hanging out with lemurs for hours on end, waiting for their tails to go stiff, which is like the universal sign that an animal's about to poop. Despite all of the challenges that are associated with researching lemurs, I've found it to be incredibly rewarding, both as an animal lover, being able to spend time just observing and appreciating all the quirks and gimmicks associated with species and individuals, but also as a scientist, being able to puzzle through all of the unknowns, the things that we don't understand yet about these animals or their microbiomes, really appeals to me personally. So where did all this come from? I guess that's a really good question, a long winding road. I wanted to be a veterinarian since I was 4, until I was about 24, and I was not a girl who played with Barbies. My favorite game was one that I made up. It was called Raised By, because we were all orphans who had been raised by different animals, thereby imbuing us with the power to morph into those animals. So every kind of episode of playing Raised By, the conflict was always poachers or saving local wildlife from a forest fire. And I always wanted to play the princes when we were playing, Disney classics. I was Prince Philip, I was Peter Pan or Aladdin. I was not going to sit around waiting to be rescued. I wanted to be the one having the adventure. My mom's always said I have a way with words, and I think to some extent she always assumed I would go into a career in the humanities. But to her credit, as soon as she saw how interested I was in animals, when I was 13, she set up a volunteer experience for me at a local veterinary clinic, and I ended up working for them for a decade. So that was incredible firsthand, hands-on experience, taking care of animals and actually getting to literally see inside them on surgery days. So how did I get interested in gut microbiomes? Microbiology was hands down my favorite class in all of undergrad. It just made inherent sense to me that you have these tiny organisms and you can test things in very specific ways, so the mechanisms really appealed to me. So after undergrad, I did not get into vet school, but I did get an internship for nutrition and research at Disney's Animal Kingdom. So I went and learned how to feed and take care of over 1,000 different animals belonging to over 100 different species. I learned that animals, which I love, and guts, which I love, and food, which I love, they all come together in the world of gut microbiomes. So if you consider all the herbivores on the entire planet, right? They all eat plants, which are loaded with fiber, and no animal on the entire planet makes a digestive enzyme to break down fiber. So horses, sheep, rabbits, giraffes, any leaf eater or plant eater on the planet shouldn't exist, except because of gut microbes. So moving from animals to humans, my current research really dives into the mysteries of baking bread. And I'm doing that as part of the Sourdough Project, a global citizen science project in Rob Dunn's lab at NC State. We've been baking bread for 10,000 years or more, but nobody's actually ever studied the microbes that live in the sourdough starters that we use to bake our bread. So through the Sourdough Project, we recruited over 560 people to send us samples of their own sourdough starters from their homes in 17 countries across the globe. That research has really helped us to try to establish with DNA sequencing what microbes, bacteria and yeast live in these different starters, but also what those microbes are doing in those starters as far as producing aromatic compounds and acids and other flavors that contribute to our experience of bread. And what we're really trying to get at with this study is whether where you live or what you do as a baker actually influences the microbes that live in your starter. One of my favorite ways to engage with the general public is through teaching. I find it incredibly rewarding to walk into a classroom, dispel some of the common misconceptions that all bacteria are bad when most of them are actually beneficial, and simultaneously to be able to empower students to really engage with science and to start to think of themselves as scientists. So it didn't really occur to me at the time when I was in school, but there really aren't a whole lot of role models for women in science in general. When I was getting my master's, somebody once asked if I was getting my MS or my MRS, implying that I was just going for higher education to find a husband, which was not the case. Another more recent challenge has been finding a balance between my personal and professional life, especially since having my daughter. I had a child about 5.5 months ago, and it's been simultaneously the most incredible, most magical, most empowering experience I've ever had is to find myself as a parent and a mother and to realize I can do this and I'm great at it. But then also to juggle what I think is best for her. Going into a lab is, fraught with timing difficulties, time spent away from the baby, but also being around specific chemicals is actually a health hazard. So there are a lot of things that I have to think through a lot more these days. Having a daughter has been an additional challenge in thinking about not only what world do I want her to grow up in, but also how can I make sure that she feels empowered and appreciated for everything that she is, and not to ever feel reduced to you should be a pretty face or you should look or act this specific way. That's been kind of impactful on my parenting style, even in the words that I use to interact with her. I don't say, oh, beautiful baby. I try to say, oh, you're working hard, and to really credit her with more descriptors than just looks. I'd like to think that I'd be thrilled with any career choice or aspirations that Marjorie has, and that I would encourage her to pursue whatever Having a daughter, I not only hope that she grows up in a world where she's appreciated and empowered, I would hope that no matter what her interests are, that I would help to encourage her to pursue those interests, whether they're in a STEM career or the humanities, any of those more typically like feminized career paths. I just want to encourage her to say, whatever you are, be a good one. What'd you think? What'd you think?